This is 49th and Cambie in Vancouver, and you might not know it with all the cars, but it actually hosts a busy bus route and one stop of the famous SkyTrain. But there's a bit of a problem. The whole system it represents is currently facing a transit death spiral. The transit death spiral is a pretty simple idea. It's where a drop in ridership causes fare revenue to fall, prompting service cuts that make transit less convenient, leading to even fewer riders and continuing on downward the spiral goes. Unfortunately, this is something that can be seen across North America, including Metro Vancouver. Reduced ridership during the pandemic caused fare revenue to fall, and service soon followed. While pandemic recovery has been strong in some parts of the region, crowded and unreliable service capped by transit funding and a lack of bus priority still has us facing off with a transit death spiral unless we do something about it. Now, I'm no master of transit, so I wanted to get an expert's opinion, and I couldn't think of anybody better than
Dennis Agar.
Dennis Agar.
Dennis Agar.
Hi, I'm Dennis Agar. I'm the Executive Director of Movement, Metro Vancouver Transit Riders. Movement is here to elevate the voices of transit riders. There are 1 million of us in Metro Vancouver, about a third of the region, but our voice just gets lost in the regional conversation. And so we want to set the agenda on getting faster, more abundant, more reliable public transit. When you cut transit, it's different from cutting other things because there's always feedback loops happening. If you cut transit, people will notice and they'll use it less. And when they use it less, politicians will notice and they'll say, hey, nobody's on the bus. And then they'll cut more. And then it just keeps going down and down and down until you have no transit at all. That's the death spiral.
Think about the 99B line from UBC to Commercial Broadway. It's the busiest bus route in all of the US and Canada, carrying over 50,000 people a day. And it often has headways as short as 90 seconds. But let's say it came less frequently, unreliably every 5, 10, or 15 minutes. At first, there would be long waits to get into cram buses, but eventually people would adjust and find different ways to get where they needed to go. That's what a bad transit system does to you. When you think it's going to be there and it's not, you stop relying on it. And when people stop relying on it, fares, one of the key funding sources, drops, which helps to degrade service, and down she goes. And this isn't just Metro Vancouver, this is currently happening in many cities across the continent. Chicago, Toronto, Ottawa, Pittsburgh, Portland, and Dallas, all currently facing similar issues, where lack of funding is leading to service cuts that threaten to set the death spiral in motion. And while funding is part of the problem here in Metro Vancouver, the issue, right now, is a bit different.
Since COVID, they've shifted service away from Vancouver and into Surrey. They were doing this because there was really big overcrowding in Surrey and demand was dropping in Vancouver. But that has created bigger drops in Vancouver. And so today, what we see is that while other parts of the region have recovered in terms of ridership back to pre-COVID levels, in these parts of Vancouver, where service has been cut aggressively, ridership has not recovered. It's kind of plateaued at like 50, 60% of what it was before COVID.
That lower ridership, depressed by lower service, leaves us in a precarious situation, which has been a subject of a recent existential crisis just a year ago. A $600 million gap in funding was going to lead to cuts of up to 50% of bus service as well as 30% of rail. And that gap exists because the current funding model that primarily relies on transit fares, property tax, and motor fuel tax is simply not sustainable as fares wane due to lower service, lack of political will, and less fuel tax as we shift towards EVs. Unfortunately, funding has been found, but it is just a stopgap for the next couple years. After that, the risk of cuts are even greater if a new funding model, boost in services, and better bus priority isn't implemented, which is just the thing to set off the death spiral into overdrive. Now, if you know me, you'll know that I'm not a big transit nerd. I'm an urbanism nerd. I'm a micromobility nerd. So why am I talking about this? I'm talking about it because this is something that affects everybody, not just transit users. Maybe you never take transit and you only drive, and maybe you're thinking, who cares? Well, I'm here to say that who should be you. Because if you think traffic is bad now, well, I've got some bad news.
One of the things that makes us notable is that we have no freeways connecting the downtown core with the rest of the region. And so we would collapse as a region if we didn't have buses moving 50, 100 people at a time down all of these neighborhood streets into the city center. and having the SkyTrain connecting in 3 different directions from the city center, right? Like, we just don't have the capacity to move people around. Whether you care about if those people are in a car or a bus or a bike, you don't have to care. You just have to know that the buses in this region that have really high ridership compared to other regions in North America are doing the heavy lifting. And you've got to imagine what a city would be like without those buses.
We're all people just trying to get where we need to go. Most people aren't drivers, transit riders, cyclists, pedestrians. We are people using a bike, taking the bus, driving a car, or walking to work. Most of us are just trying to get around in a comfortable and convenient way. So when you chip away at transit, you are left with a system that naturally leaves people with trust issues. Look at this viaduct, full of cars, right next to a SkyTrain station. Just one of those trains can carry as many as 1,200 people. With the average occupancy rate of 1.5 people per car, that would equate to 800 cars needed to move those people. If even half decided to drive instead, it would bring 400 more cars to further clog up our traffic-jammed roads, and we would all be worse off for it. And coming back to micromobility, it might not seem bad for some of those people to decide to choose a bike instead of transit, but that gain might very well be offset by a loss. Because as much as micromobility is a vital last-mile solution to transit, transit is a vital range extender for people who primarily walk or use micromobility. I am one of those multimodal explorers on occasion, and I do not want to use my car more than I have to, which is exactly what I would be more likely to do if transit service gets worse.
And just as induced demand is a thing with cars, it's also a thing with transit. But instead of the system getting worse when more people use it, it actually gets better.
Induced demand means that when you make driving easier by adding more road space, more people decide to drive. Over time, traffic fills back up to the same or even worse levels than before. Basically, building more road space doesn't fix congestion. It encourages more driving, and everyone is worse off. But when it comes to transit, when service follows that upward demand, you make transit faster, more frequent, and more reliable. It leads to shorter and shorter headways until a schedule becomes obsolete, and in the end, everyone is better off. And we've already seen examples of this here in Metro Vancouver.
Surrey's population has been growing, but transit demand is growing way faster than population growth. Why is that? Well, TransLink has been gently boosting frequency. They've been adding buses to existing routes, nothing special, just a bus that used to come every 15 minutes now comes every 12, and then 10. And then now we have suburban streets that have buses coming every 6 minutes. And they're connecting to other buses that are frequent. Because once you have that grid of connections, once your bus is frequent and the bus you're connecting to is frequent, it's like the whole world opens up to you. And that, over the last 4 years since COVID, since TransLink has been moving these resources into Surrey, that's been what's happening. And that's what gets me so excited, that you don't have to do much special stuff to get more people on transit. You just have to boost the frequency.
This is the inverse of the transit death spiral. It's a positive feedback loop. We'll call it the transit success spiral. That's not such a catchy term. Maybe we can workshop that.
In the city of Surrey, there were 6 million additional transit trips in 2024 alone on buses. Imagine doing something that causes 6 million individual trips to be different from the year before. That is an enormous shift. And those are all trips that weren't taken in cars or Ubers or ask mom for a ride somewhere. That decongests this fast-growing suburban city. It allows people to save money. It helps people get places faster than before because they're not waiting as long for the bus. It's more frequent. That's the kind of juice that I want to see happen in every city in this region. It doesn't have to just be Surrey. I always say, you just tell me what you care about and I'll find a way to pitch transit to you, because it just touches every aspect of life.
It reduces traffic, cuts pollution, boosts economic growth, and helps people save money by needing fewer cars. Strong transit networks also make cities more connected and fair, giving freedom to people who can't drive while supporting local businesses and creating walkable, vibrant neighborhoods. Transit is a force multiplier to our society in more ways than one.
I mean, the simple answer is we just need to get more buses on the road, right? Trains are awesome and we need more of those too. And we know that takes a decade and a lot of work to build the coalition to get enough money, blah, 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 blah. We can get more buses on the road this year. And when we do, we can be confident that it will spur more people to ride it, right? We've seen the rapid ridership growth in Surrey. We've seen it happen in Brampton too, where you invest in transit and people show up.
That right there is the key, finding the funding to improve service. We might look at Seattle for some inspiration with their transportation levy implemented last year, or maybe an EV tax to replace the gas tax they forego. Either way, securing the funding is typically going to be decided by those in power, and getting them to hear it starts with you.
Your politicians in your region are not used to hearing from transit riders. And so I'd like you to change that. If you can just write a quick email, quick phone call, say like, hey, I had this issue on transit, like I was left behind by a full bus, or I don't think I should have to wait 30 minutes in my community to catch a bus. I think it should be 15. They just need to hear more of those perspectives. They're used to hearing from motorists because that's who's in their social circle. That's usually who's empowered enough to get involved in municipal elections. Like you can think about the dynamic with freeways. No one ever questions a freeway expenditure. Like if a government like the province of BC says, yeah, we're gonna widen Highway 1, everyone's like, yep, do it. Like it happens with no controversy. That's what I picture happening with transit once more of us make our voices heard. And the more they're hearing from that, the more they'll be like, oh, if I want to get reelected, I have to like curry the favor of the transit riders vote. I guess I'll just promise more spending on that. And then boom, it's done.
At the end of the day, transit isn't just about getting from A to B. It's about building a region where everyone can move around freely and affordably. It's about keeping our streets flowing, our air clean, and our communities connected. Whether you ride the bus every day or only see it pass by your window, what happens to the system affects you, and it's up to all of us to make sure it keeps moving forward.
Now, if you want to know more about transit in Metro Vancouver, follow Movement YVR and subscribe to their newsletter.